Hi, Thomas. How are you today?
Very good, Betsy.
Okay, well, this is Thomas and Betsy. We're here at the American Intelligence Media, and last night, we were on fire. I swear I wanted to turn that microphone on right then and there because we were having such an amazing insight into all that's going on with DACA that we know that our listeners would want to know about because, our listeners are really smart. So, Thomas, get that fire going again and tell them what you're thinking about DACA.
Well, DACA upsets me. And the reason it upsets me is because it is an endorsement of unlawfulness. It is an endorsement of unconstitutionality, illegality, capriciousness, and absolute arbitrary nonsense on the part of the executive branch under Obama. I'd like to tell the story how DACA came to pass because most people are quite confused. And only yesterday did I hear the first person actually speaking about it properly and making reference to the reality of DACA. And I believe that was, Roy Moore?
I don't know who it was, but it really struck me because it came after an audio that we had done where you had pointed out that this wasn't anything that was passed by Congress and it wasn't an executive order. What it was a memo out of Homeland Security. It blew me away when you told me that, Thomas, and it looks like other people are taking note of that too.
Yes, it's nothing more than a presidential policy memorandum, which is an excuse for a presidential executive order. But in a policy memorandum under this specific type, it doesn't even go into the National Registry. It's not a law. It is nothing more than a recommendation. It actually has no validity whatsoever, no legal standing, no jurisdiction whatsoever. So it was a memorandum from President Obama to the Homeland Security Director saying, please let immigration and all branches of Homeland Security, as well as the Justice Department, now begin to use what they call discretionary prosecution for these specific individuals that were arbitrarily named. He simply picked a 10-year period when there were quite a bit of children coming into the country with illegal aliens who were being put into our school system. Now, to really get the full impact of this, you need to take a step back. I'm sorry, before I get into the story, I got to do a little historical background, and that's that when President Bush Jr. came to power and No Child Left Behind came to power, that was the federal takeover of the school systems, which was a state's right and always has been and always will be. It is an unconstitutional takeover of the school systems in the states. And this was a horrible, horrible thing because now the taxes paid to the federal government wouldn't be given back to the states unless they complied with new federal regulations, which were complete nonsense and based upon, again, capricious arbitrariness, complete insanity. As a matter of fact, the study that was done by George Bush Jr.'s state, Texas, was shown later to be completely fallacious, and two of the people went to jail over the issue for falsifying all of the information. So, No Child Left Behind, complete nonsense, federal takeover of states' rights education. Now, in that 10-year period, because the states' rights were taken away and the federal government said, you will take care of every homeless child that comes to you, you will take care of every illegal alien, you will not turn them in, and you will actually provide for them. And there were laws that were written that provided that a school, every single school receiving a single federal dollar, and that would be every public school, even if the state tried to get out of it, doesn't matter. They incorporated that money into what was sent back to the states. So every state school, every single one of them, had to have clothes for the homeless, food for the homeless, an agreement not to turn in illegal aliens, an agreement never even to ask anybody whether they're a U.S. citizen. In other words, we gave away free education. When that started to happen so blatantly in America, all you had to do is get across the border, and as we see, there is open borders. There are open borders here in America, and it's been promoted throughout the throughout the Clinton administration. Though both Bushes, Clinton, and Obama all said they were for having borders, none of them did a thing about it, and that's the reason the southern border is in such a mess. If you could get your child, and literally this happened, if you could get your child to that border, and in some cases even before you got to the border, the U.S. immigration department picked that child up, brought them into this country, and you then had, what we know as anchor babies. Those anchor babies had to be fed, clothed, put in a home, give social services, and give free education. And schools were strapped with the most horrible problem they ever had, and that's that they had to deliver education in all the languages of every child that came into that school.
Now, for those listening, Thomas and I had first-hand experience in this because we were in the school business during that time and had to make these provisions in our schools, correct?
Absolutely, and we were in charge of quite a few schools. And as a superintendent of the schools, it became a major issue that we were the island of social refuge. We became literally a sanctuary schools for illegals. We weren't even. If I don't get me off on this.
I'm not going to get you off on that.
If I get into the law, I will get so upset.
I know you will. And
illegals have more rights than citizens in schools.
I know.
So these children that went to those schools, if they graduated, and this is his intent was to say, Barack Obama's intent was to say, if these illegal children went to a public school and they graduated or got a GED, we're going to let them stay in this country indefinitely and give them work permits. Now, here's the problem with that. Not only with anchor babies who are sent across the border, the second that anchor baby comes, their whole family can come. Their whole family can even become citizens because we have yet to address the illegality of anchor babies. Okay? But with these DACA babies, with these what they call dreamers, this is an absurd scenario because first off, they were brought into this country illegally. We've already given them social services on the state level, massively more than our own citizens. We gave them free education, and then they can have 3 misdemeanors, and as long as they get a GED, they get to stay in this country indefinitely with the dreamer. And the reason the dreamer concept is put in there is they're dreaming of amnesty. And yes, Obama's intent in all of this was to give full amnesty to them. Now,
oh, but you also give them euphemistic titles that, don't seem as bad as they really are. So people out on the street think dreamers, oh, they're dreaming about being in America, dreaming of a better life and all that. And I say, well, that's all well and good. But now that you've had a taste of it, go back to your country and implement in your country what you found here in America.
This doesn't happen in other countries until recently. And that's where we're going with this conversation. We're going to describe how what has happened in Europe Obama attempted to have happen here in America, but it didn't get to happen because we actually are still following the law. We aren't following the European Union has basically thrown the law of every country that has joined it out the window. And there's laws that the countries in the European Union don't agree with. Well, we have laws here, and those laws say the president has nothing to do with the laws of immigration. Now, the president has 100% right to stop refugees and to stop asylum to any country he wants. Obama did that for the 7 countries he bombed. Okay? Trump did it to those same 7 countries. He got in trouble for it. It was found out later that he was absolutely right. So that part is executive. So Obama, when he was trying to create amnesty for the 11.7 million illegal aliens that are in this country that we know about. There are many of them who won't let anyone know who they are, and so we don't know how many are here. He was trying to create amnesty for all of them in the following way. He did this arbitrarily for a group of students because supposedly this was deferred action. Deferred action means I'm going to break the law. But he didn't really break the law because he didn't give them amnesty yet. He was planning on it. That would have been breaking the law, and no one in the Congress would have let that happen. No one in the Supreme Court would have let that happen. Even state and federal courts wouldn't have let that happen. So what he did was he snuck around. He did an end run, as he always did, with creating non-executive orders. So he orders Homeland Security to defer their judgments and defer action because these children shouldn't be prosecuted. They were brought in. These are children who were brought in against their will into America.
Right.
Well, but wait a second. Let's go back and let's ask a few questions.
Well, that's on Obama. That's not on Trump. Obama's the one that created this unconstitutional mess. If the Dreamers are upset, they need to go find Obama.
This memorandum was secret. So all these deferred actions started to build up until now we have at least 800,000. It's probably more like 1.7 million. But the point is this was deferred action, so nobody did anything about it. The Congress didn't do anything about it. And Obama hoped that with getting this in place, that then he could build on it. So what did he do immediately after this?
But if Clinton had won, they would have definitely, put a lid on it and moved on.
Oh, beyond that, there were two other policy recommendations, memorandums that he wrote. One was to say everybody before the arbitrary date that he chose for Dreamers, for the DACA, everyone before that, come on in. And that was contested by many states, and an injunction was put on it, and he was told no. But they didn't go after the DACA. They didn't put an injunction upon DACA. So what then did Obama do? This then went to a third policy memorandum. And that memorandum said that this would be for deferred action against parents of Americans. By Americans, he means anybody in America, not citizens. So these Dreamers could bring in all their relatives. The Dreamers' parents, who were illegal aliens and never did, I want to point this out, the illegal aliens that created DACA and DACA themselves, they didn't even get on the path to citizenship. None of them that I can find. None of them. They all believed they were getting amnesty. None of them started the process to become an American citizen. Now that's disgusting. That's disgusting. How could that not be the first tenet of any program that would lead to deferred action of being sent back? This is deferred action for deportation, legal deportation, because they are illegal aliens. Illegal. Why do we allow illegal to even exist in a sentence with alien that doesn't exist with the word deportation in the same sentence? How can we allow there to be sanctuary cities? How can we allow there to be a sanctuary state of California? Let's remember, 70% of DACA, the Dreamers, are in 50% of the Dreamers are in Texas and California. And guess what's happening? If you go and you read the reports about DACA, they'll say this didn't affect any workers in America, Native American workers who are citizens. Lie.
What do you mean by Native American citizens?
That they're citizens.
You're not Indian Native American Indians.
No.
Okay.
DACA workers, the lies, the Obama lie says DACA workers did not take away jobs from American citizens. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Of course they did. Because they'll work cheaper. They are not citizens. They're working under the table. They will vote Democratic. They will go and they love to go and live in sanctuary states, sanctuary cities, because even when they're picked up for their third misdemeanor or for a felony as a DACA person, and this is another reason that it is insanity to even consider the stupidest immigration policy ever written by Barack Obama himself, who was not a U.S. citizen, by the way, and don't get me started on that. He's Indonesian, and he's...
Yeah, no, go ahead. People want to hear. Give your take on that.
His alleged Kenyan father wasn't his father. His mother was a CIA agent. She was working to penetrate the Kenyan Muslim Islamic terrorist network in Kenya. She became pregnant. That isn't the child that she ended up with later. She was a 2-year period. She didn't even have a child after that. And then she went to Indonesia and came back with a child who was the bastard child of the leader of Subud, S-U-B-U-D, which is a Muslim terrorist group. He's Indonesian. Just take a look at him. Anyone who thinks he's African doesn't really know what they're looking at, obviously. And we know that his real name is Barry Soetoro, which he lied about. We know that he came to this country and actually got federal grants for being a foreign student. We know that his mother, his sister, and all of his family worked through the International Institute in Hawaii, which is noted for being a CIA-controlled operation.
So as Barack Obama, was he an illegal alien, and
Yes.
now he's letting in other illegal
Yes.
aliens? Well, then this sounds more like an invasion.
It is an invasion.
Tell me about that.
Now, we all know that he's also a Muslim. His brother is a
Right.
Muslim. He was raised a Muslim. Even on the documents in his school, he said he was Muslim. He lied, said he went to a Christian school when he was in Indonesia. That's a lie. He did not. So if you look at, and by the way, he sealed his records, and they're still sealed. Well, why don't we seal Trump's records?
Yeah, I know we could talk about a lot, but let's just stay on track here.
Okay, so yes, that's the reason he did what he did with DACA is because he bombed 7 countries, created 55 million refugees. There was an agreement before he even bombed them that where they would go. And this was a planned invasion, a reverse crusade, Islamic, fascist, fundamentalist invasion of Europe. Europeans were convinced that they weren't replicating enough children, so therefore they have literally been told your nations no longer exist. And that's what you hear the leaders saying. The people who live in those countries are fighting it tooth and fang, as well as some of the countries. But this was planned. So it was supposed to reach America. So that is the reason Obama allowed 100,000 refugees, almost all of them, over 90% of them, coming from the very countries that he bombed. In other words, he bombed them, he made them radicalized, and then he invited them into this country without even vetting them. No refugee in the U.S. refugee program coming through the United Nations in coordination with 189 Catholic organizations do not vet a single refugee.
But
and they get so much money that it is more money than we pay our wounded veterans.
So Obama being a Muslim, he would be all about the caliphate, and they would want to take over America. And so what better way to do it than an invasion of illegals?
Yes, and the only thing left is to decimate Damascus, which was his plan.
Okay, but let's talk about America.
Okay,
let's go back to DACA and the invasion of illegals
Americans
in America.
Got awake to the fact that George Soros is providing the boats to bring the illegal aliens into Europe. Anyone ever asked the question how they get across the water, who pays their...
I think most of our listeners would know that already.
Yeah, those people don't have money, okay? They aren't paying their way. And it's been busted again and again. George Soros, he couldn't get them into America except by airplane and by the 100,000 refugees and by programs of laxity in our own borders through immigration, through visas, and so on and so forth. No one knows. Right now, there are 11.7 known illegal aliens in this country. No one, that does not count those who have been visiting and who have gone over their visa. That does not count the unregistered, unknown ones. It doesn't count a lot of them. So what happened was Obama started working on this country from this side. As soon as he started bombing, he started working on amnesty for all immigrants. Therefore, any immigrants coming into this country...
And not immigrants. Immigrants, when you say that word, to me, I see a legal process associated with that.
I'm sorry, illegal immigrants. He wanted there to be no borders for all illegal immigrants coming out of the countries that he bombed and coming out of Europe and all the other countries that they have invaded. That didn't work here. George Soros was stopped. He was stopped. And so he started these end runs. The first one, people don't even know. Well, the first one was DACA. He was successful because it was basically secret. It wasn't until he tried the second one that then the states started contesting it. And they said, no. You're not going to make this go back for infinitely. This was a 10-year period. And now you want us to handle everybody from all time? No. And then that was put down by the states and by the courts. And then it went to a third proposal, which was the one that I mentioned, deferred action for parents of Americans. That one didn't get through the courts. That one would have said any illegal immigrant or alien in this country can bring in their parents.
Okay.
That's insanity. That is complete open borders. That means he attempted with all of his might to destroy all immigration law and to make it unconstitutional, capricious, invalid, and insane, because that isn't what we're about. What does that do to all of the immigrants who have come in properly and become American citizens?
Not to mention how it ruins all of these people's lives. I mean, that they think they're here and now they're not going to be here. Well, we are a country of laws and order, and so we're going to have to follow the law here. And that's what I see Trump doing. Congress did not pass immigration reform. They've been struggling with it. They haven't done it. Obama took advantage of it. He put his little memorandum in. All this action has been created, and Trump is saying, look, hey, it's going to be off my plate. Congress, you deal with this and you come up with a resolution 6 months from now. Thomas, will they come up with a resolution?
Discretionary prosecution means illegal. They will not come up with a new law for immigration.
We're talking about Congress, right?
Congress, because it would have to follow the rule of law.
And
we already have the rule of law, immigration law laws directly out of Congress, and they are being completely ignored, if not warred against, with sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. So do you think representatives from the sanctuary state of California are actually going to come up with an immigration policy that follows the rule of law or the U.S. Bill of Rights, or gives some kind of respect to citizens or those who have gone through the process to become citizens? Melania Trump, if she was on DACA, how do you think the Congress would react? How do you think America would react if she was still on a deferred status because there was discretionary prosecution? That means illegal activity. That means criminal activity. That means capricious, insane activity that says, oh, your birthday didn't meet the status, therefore you're not going to get into the DACA program. So the person whose birthday didn't meet the status can now sue us. And that's what we're allowing. We're allowing, this has already happened, we are allowing illegal aliens to sue the government for rights. They don't have rights, folks. And all of you Americans who want to say that you want open borders, there is something wrong with you.
Hey, open borders works the other way. Go the other way.
Look at open borders in Europe. There is, when Merkel just spoke at the United Nations, when Macron spoke at the United Nations, guess who showed up to listen to them? Nobody. Because their nations don't exist anymore. Why would we listen to them? They have been overrun. One of them was in a state of economic martial law, and for practically a year was in a state of full martial law. Germany won't even acknowledge what's happening in its country. Other countries have admitted they no longer exist because their social services have been broken. They have offered great amounts of money to the migrants to go back home because they have now created places for them in Jordan, inside of Syria, and in other places. Turkey's ready to take back anybody who wants to come. You can't give them enough money. They're not leaving. So Europe is gone. That was supposed to be what was going to happen here in America under Obama. And this then explains, why would someone who was raised a Muslim, who put on Muslim garb and went to his brother's Muslim wedding, who allowed Hillary Clinton to have Huma Abedin, whose mother is basically the female representative of the Muslim Brotherhood, who allowed the Arab Spring, who allowed all of these horrible attacks against Muslims, you have to ask and say, well, maybe he's not a Muslim. Wrong. He wanted all those Muslims to come to America. He wants Sharia law in America. He wants chaos in America. And that would then bring on the Mahdi, the Messiah of the Muslims. Obama is doing his duty to Islam by creating chaos everywhere in the world, by taking over the West and getting rid of anything but Sharia law, by focusing on Syria, because the prophecies say until Syria is decimated and Damascus is destroyed, the Messiah of the Muslims will not come. He has done everything he could, and Hillary Clinton was going to drop the bomb.
He's no longer in office.
Yes, but it was all set up.
It's all set up, but what's happening now?
It's reversed.
Okay,
it was all set up for Hillary to completely take over, and now it's all set up for Trump to take over. If Trump wanted to, he could take over this country tomorrow without ever telling anybody anything, because Obama had set up so many executive orders that gave him martial law power that even if there was a cyber attack, which he might not even have to tell you about, even if there was a coronal mass ejection, a solar flare, if there was an EMP attack, well, it doesn't matter. He could take over everything, including your personal bank account, including all food, the food even in your house.
So he could just come in and clean house and get Hillary Clinton's bank account and shut down Obama's bank account? Saying? Yes. Hey, I have a question. Each of these departments have inspector generals, right? An inspector general is an attorney that's in these departments to advise the department of what's illegal, not illegal, constitutional, whatever. Because you can't expect the department heads to know everything. So where was the Inspector General for Homeland Security looking over this memorandum that was sent to him. Did Obama send him this memorandum? But who sent that memorandum? And was that IG there saying, hey, look, this is not constitutional?
Well, Betsy, when you say Inspector General, for someone like myself or anyone in the conclave that's been in the military, it usually causes you to shiver, because when you're in the military and the Inspector General comes around, when they're done, you may go to jail. You won't be prosecuted. You'll just simply be put in jail. You won't get a chance to have a jury of your peers.
I thought they were there to advise the people in the department.
In non-military settings,
okay,
this is what happens. For instance, I'll give you an exact for instance. Recently, actually before Trump was elected, the FISA court, who has been in non-compliance with the Inspector General's recommendations for years, did another inspection of them, and it came out. And a lot of the reason for the big furor around FISA and FISA this, FISA that, was all because they had failed their Inspector General's investigation. They failed it so miserably that you started to see some of the statistics from that report come out.
The courts? The FISA courts?
The FISA courts, yes.
Okay.
Because the FISA courts must make the NSA, CIA, and FBI be in, and all the office of the director of the Office of National Intelligence, and all 17 agencies, the Treasury, everybody, anybody who has to have an international warrant has to go through FISA, right? So, first off, FISA was created because there was so much illegality and so much, I don't even know a word for it. They were spying on everyone. Every single nation.
It's a free-for-all.
Yeah, didn't matter. There's the Geneva Convention that says you can't spy on anyone you're not at war with. That has been completely abnegated, and now it's just a complete free-for-all. They spy on everyone. And if you even say somebody's name who's in a foreign country, they can spy on you. If you say Al-Qaeda, they can spy on you, because that's an international threat. That's not just national security, that's international security. So in this country now, as we've gone over, they're propagandizing Americans, and every American is in fact can be considered a terrorist, and the Department of Defense is now working within the boundaries of America. They've never had domestic authority before in history.
Yoo-hoo, I'm over here with my question.
So, IGs, when they come in the military, they put you in jail. But if they come in like they did at the FISA court and say they're complete noncompliance, then with the FBI, they said, you haven't turned in a single report. The NSA and the CIA had turned in some reports showing that they had swept up millions and millions of Americans in illegal surveillance under the auspices of FISA warrants. They actually told them they were in 100% noncompliance and ordered them to change. The FBI didn't even respond to the IG's Inspector General's investigation of the FISA court. Though they were sent a letter and told they were in noncompliance, Comey basically just didn't do anything. This is while Comey was still in charge, okay? With the CIA and with the NSA, they got a lot of flack in the public, in the media, and nothing happened. And now you have Jeff Sessions, who is not a warrior enough to be in that position. You need a warrior in that position right now. Plus, he's already recused himself from the biggest investigation going on that has everything to do with national security. So he needs out.
I'm so sorry, people, that I can't keep him on track. But, Thomas.
So, the Inspector General's report that said FISA should be closed down, Jeff Sessions recently made a big deal and lobbied and insisted that it be passed again completely as it is. So, are there Inspector Generals in the Department of Justice, in State Department, so on and so forth? Yes, they are. But unfortunately, so many of those people they're civilians, they're non-military. There's not a lot that can be done except recommendations, because the IG doesn't prosecute, to answer that question.
I didn't say prosecute. I said I thought they were there to help and give legal support to the departments. Maybe I misunderstood.
No, you're absolutely right. That's what they're supposed to do.
If they were in Homeland Security, is there an Inspector General who would have looked over the legalities of this memorandum and would have said, hey, folks, this is unconstitutional?
There's no such thing as legality of a presidential memorandum.
Oh, so you
Presidential policy memorandums don't exist. They were invented by Barack Obama.
Okay,
they actually
so-
have no authority,
so
and they're
these
they're
are
the
unconstitutional themselves.
Correct. No one has ever questioned them because they are secret.
And so,
In general, in most cases, there
And
are
in-
executive orders. There are 3 other types that he used. He had just as many illegal executive orders as he had legal executive orders. And remember that only executive orders go on the National Registry so that you can see them and know that they actually happened. He can write presidential policy memorandums that can tell just one office in one part of one branch of one agency to go do illegal stuff, and they're the only ones who even know.
and so we have an illegal alien president in there writing unconstitutional memorandums given to departments that don't vet it for their own constitutionality and legality, running a program to bring in like a what do we call it? Not a refugee crisis, an invasion.
Correct.
An invasion of America, and we have so much fluoride that we're all idiots in our public education, and nobody says anything that America's being overrun by these people.
Absolutely correct.
Saul Alinsky would have given them an A+.
Yes, absolutely correct, Betsy. You're absolutely right. And it's worse.
I'm sorry, it took a while, but that is such a big thought that everyone needs to really put in your mind. This is what's happening.
Well, and it's worse. Every single congressperson, senator, or member of the House should be fired because they allowed a president to create a 10-year deferment program that is completely illegal, that they never contested, when it is their job not only to contest it, but he stole their job from them, and they never said a word.
Sweetie, these people aren't going to do their job. They allowed a Pakistani spy ring to infiltrate their computers and take all their secrets. And then you have the Secretary of State with her server in her bathroom. This is just crazy.
We are in a crazy time, but the reason it's so crazy is because the complacency of those in power in the White House thought that they could take executive order and stretch it to its ultimate limits. And the beauty of it all, those same people, Barack Obama, it was pointed out once that supposedly the village that he was born in Kenya, where his father was from, where in fact his father was part of the most radical Islamic terrorists in Kenya and still are in power today. And you just look that up. They are basically the mafia of Kenya. But he lived in a very humble village, was born in this humble village. If Barack Obama would have donated $25 a month, that village would have had fresh running water, but he didn't do that. He would rather spend infinite amount, trillions of dollars, bombing other countries, displacing people, taking away their water, taking away their rights, all for the sake of what? Who did Barack Obama really work for? You need to ask that question.
Yeah, we'll do a separate audio on Barack. But, okay, let's finish up on this one. Any more things to say about DACA?
Oh, I have a lot to say about DACA. I say that any politician who says it out loud or votes for anything but law and wants to create illegal status immigrants in this country, wants to knock down the borders, wants to allow complete chaos and anarchy, really. It's just basically a form of anarchy. Look at Europe. The anarchy is descending upon Europe, and they are acting like it is not. Same thing happening here, with Black Lives Matter and Antifa out in the streets trying to riot and kill people and have killed people. And yet we have yet to even create a congressional statement like they did against white supremacists and KKK members. Why aren't we writing the same exact type but opposite, stating that Black Lives Matter and Antifa, anyone on the streets rioting, especially with weapons or bats, needs to simply be locked up and given the 10-year term that is the consequence of doing such an act. You can protest peacefully. That's how Europe has transformed and became a free set of nations out of the Iron Curtain status that they were in before with communism. But now, look what's happened. One revolution after the next, one invasion after the next. But here in America, we cannot allow the Soros revolution and the revolution that almost took over America with Hillary Clinton to come to pass. We cannot allow that to happen.
There's something I do not want to assume anymore. Sometimes I think, oh, surely people know that. And then I find out they don't. Look, our forefathers talked about foreign and domestic enemies. What you have here is an example of an infiltration of a domestic enemy in our country. The military is supposed to uphold and protect us from foreign and domestic enemies. What are they doing?
Well, when people don't care, and they don't care because they have too much leisure time, and that's what happened in America, and they didn't care. So they just went with their liberal, let everybody do their own thing, and this is what has come to pass because the vested interests, which have been affecting America since 1913, are so ensconced that they are a permanent class of politicians in a bureaucracy that does not want to change. But you know what? They're all fake. Most of the federal positions don't even need to be there. And the way that the House and the Congress works, it can be transformed with just a few laws. We can change America back to the way that it was supposed to be, and it is changing. It's just going to take quite a bit of time to turn that giant ship around or to make that dinosaur dance, because these gigantic forces of bureaucracy, if you've ever been in the military, you will understand that military and intelligence is an oxymoron. There's no intelligence in the military. It's kind of like a football player whose only thing on their mind is get the ball and move it down the field. There is no intelligence going on. It is sheer brute strength of Neanderthals who are basically
Protecting their turfs and their bureaucracies.
protecting the corporate people who pay them. Robert Mueller is well paid off before he took this job, and he was paid off even when he was in office. Just look back at his record. Same thing with Comey. These people go after greed. They go after the lust of power. And you can see what's coming of it. We've gone over this again and again, but it's being turned because of the Trump effect. When the black magicians send the evil spells towards Trump,
The witches.
Mar-a-Lago and his other places aren't touched, but they come back upon all the people who sent them. This isn't a magical effect that we're watching because America is worth saving. And whether you believe in the divine affecting policy in terms of nations and in terms of history, it doesn't matter whether you believe it. Stand back and look at history and you'll see that one person can change history.